All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get started. Someone's excited. That's cool. All right. Welcome, everyone. No need for intros. I know all of you very well. Had some key pictures of the family and my dog with a cool hat, but we're going to skip that slide. And the toolkit we're looking at today, as you can see, are all Microsoft products. And I know most of you have been using Microsoft for a very long time. So long, in fact, that when you are using a Google slide, you still call it a PowerPoint. Guilty? Are y'all guilty of that? You're like, oh no, yeah. Slide deck is now the correct term. So all kidding aside, what we're looking at today is PowerPoint 365, which is the online version. Raise your hand if you use Outlook 365, which is the Outlook Online. I use that because I had a couple issues with emails not going out with the desktop one. I'm like, I'm never doing that again. But we're going to look at PowerPoint subtitles and live transcriptions, and I'll explain when you would do that or when you would advise teachers to do that, or folks you're working with that just speak different languages. We're also going to look at Microsoft Translator, which is an app, and about a week ago, when I returned to this presentation, actually the second two, I didn't even have as a part of the presentation when I met with parent liaisons, but I added these two. But Microsoft Translator is something that the team we were already looking at, but it actually has already changed. It changed within like a month. So some of these tools are very fluid. As a matter of fact, the screenshots that we have and Microsoft still has on their websites don't even match what is on the app. Things are very fluid, especially with artificial intelligence right now. There's a lot of change, and if you go online to kind of get some references, it's probably not up to date. You're more likely to find things that are up to date on social media versus the actual websites. So we're in a very fluid time, and so my role is to help with that. So if I show you something today and then a week from today or a month from today, you're like, Wisner, this is not what I remember, I'll keep a pulse on it and we can work through it together. And then there's Microsoft Lens, which is also an app. And raise your hand if you used Immersive Reader before. It's essentially that. But it's super helpful for our kiddos that are struggling with the language, whether that's a reading barrier to learning or if it's a language barrier, right, as far as learning the English language. Now, at the very beginning of the year, there was a survey that went out as far as at home, what are the languages that are spoken primarily? Is it 100% accurate, as all surveys? Take it with a grain of salt, but this is the data that we have to work with. As you would imagine, English number one and Spanish being number two. And so that's who we serve, right? But we're starting just like other cities in the state, other districts, we're starting to see a lot of these other languages. Like if you go to Houston, we're ahead of the game when it comes to accessibility tools and the fact that we're doing this than some of these other cities, and they're having to really just kind of jump in it and figure it out really fast with a lot of stress involved. So we're kind of rolling into this with not as much stress as some other folks, so I'm happy we're in a good place as we are. But Vietnamese, that as you learn, is more and more being spoken, and at some of the high school campuses, some of the specialists may have even gone to help teachers, and then the teachers, and this is what I really want you to be sensitive with, is the stuff we talk about today in this session and other sessions. You may think, well, I'm a specialist, or I do X, Y, Z. I don't teach students, or I don't see how I would use this. But I want you to be sensitive to those conversations that are happening with struggling learners in the classroom, and dig a little deeper and figure out what that is. Because if it's a learning challenge, if it's a barrier that has to do with language, I am giving you the tools to help them. Now, I don't expect you to be an expert, but at least have some knowledge to where you can make some recommendations, or even if you're not 100% confident, point them in our direction. Cool? Cool? Yeah. All right, cool. Just making sure you're still there. All right. Some of you had those pastries and it's getting to you. All right. Hey, I had some too. I'm going to refresh because that. And as you can see, I am in PowerPoint 365, okay? This presentation is already available in the module that Cary shared. There's some other tools available to you as well. One of them is InfoBase, and for those that have heard that before but that aren't really sure again, that's a 24/7, 365 professional development platform that the district has, and we have to have by law for all our stakeholders, including students. High school students also utilize these, mostly CTE students. But there is one on Microsoft 365 as well as the other suite. I will say this though, that it was created in 2021. And 10 years ago, if it was a couple years ago, that's gold. But nowadays, there's a lot that's changed. And so if you have questions, again, just ask me. I'm more than happy to help. So let me just jump in here, because I can pivot very quickly on any one of these. Does anybody have a burning desire or like, can we look at this one first? So the three are, again, PowerPoint 365, subtitles, live transcriptions. We have Microsoft Translator, Microsoft Lens.
I'd like to see Microsoft Lens because you're telling me it's the new immersive reader.
Well, it has immersive reader in it. So let's pivot. I love this.
Man, I don't think you told the hurry.
Too late. All right, here we go. I love it. And I think it's taking a second because I'm on my Mac, but mirror displays. So what do you already know about Microsoft Lens?
The name.
The name, you've heard of it. You've heard of it, okay. And so with Microsoft Lens, it's an app. Now I won't ask you to download the app. I go to conventions and then I end up downloading a bunch of stuff and deleting it later and regretting it. So what I'm going to do is just demonstrate it. Because if you know what Microsoft Immersive Reader is, and it's got some other cool features. I was having a conversation with some folks about the possibility with language now, because we were looking at Immersive Reader. There's something that came out about a month ago called Reading Coach. We're not going to deep dive on that, but it gives feedback to students based on how they read. So it's artificial intelligence now providing teachers that extra like kind of like co-pilot to assist them in giving feedback to students. I'm going to exit this page. So what I'm going to do, and you know, if you've ever seen Ruben and I have a conversation, we can chat all day because we're both previously social studies teachers. So I have a social studies example, letter from a Birmingham jail, a great primary source document from Martin Luther King Jr. And so what I'm going to do with the app is I'm going to scan it, okay? And then I'm going to show it to you because we're not able to mirror with the phone here. As well as iPads.
Okay, so but not on a Chromebook or a laptop?
Correct, not at this time. And so the use case for this is really for students. Can teachers use the app? They can. And here's where we need to really have the conversations instead of everything being binary, like black, white, yes, no. I know that phones are a battle right now in middle school and high school. I get that. But if a student goes home with something and they don't understand it, that's when we have to know which tools to utilize and be able to advise folks on. So I bring up the app and it's just accessing the camera. That's all it's doing, right? So I'm going to take a picture. And it does it really well. And there's several apps that scan documents, like PDF scan. I don't know if you all do any of those. All I did was scan it, pretty simple. And then I confirm, and then I can crop it if I want to, like if the AI didn't do it that well, I can change that. But I'm going to click done, and I could add more pages if I want to. So I have some options here. I can actually add this to other Microsoft products, but our intentions today are to utilize this resource to extrapolate the language from it so I can learn better as a student. And so I'm going to click Immersive Reader. That's the second from the bottom, okay? If you want to download it on your phone, you can, but I'm not going to force you. But in the second to the bottom, it says Immersive Reader. And if you don't know Immersive Reader, you will by the end of the day. because it's all over the place, and it's one of those features that Microsoft has just given to the world, which is amazing. As a matter of fact, AI is now prevalent throughout a lot of Microsoft products, including Flip, formerly known as Flipgrid. And I came across it by accident the other day. But essentially, it's putting the immersive reader, and the first thing I can do is just play it. So, text-to-speech.
Civil rights and the First Amendment.
And for those that are unfamiliar with immersive reader, I'm just going to walk through a couple of the features, and then we'll look at some other apps. I can change the text. I can change the font. There's some fonts for students that have dyslexia, dysgraphia that read better, or some themes as far as color that students prefer. And here's what's even more interesting. When students test, when they're taking the STAR exam, they can change those colors as well. And a lot of students prefer like a darker background in a lighter font. That's just what, and I actually prefer that, especially if it's like later in the day. If we're looking at parts of speech, it also will label that. And so if we're looking at, kind of like the English aspect of this, do we have another chair? Yes, we do. Welcome, welcome. Then lastly, there is the option to essentially convert the entire document. So for our emerging bilinguals, right, our English language learners, this is invaluable. This is like a complete game changer, and it lives here. So what I love about Immersive Reader too is that sometimes with other language programs, even ones you pay for, some of the translation is lost because there's a lot of different types of Spanish even, right? There's different dialects and different regional. So here it actually has Spanish, Spanish Latin America, Spanish Mexico, and Spanish Spain. So it even drills down to different types of Spanish, which for us, we're lucky because that's as I showed earlier, the folks who are mostly servicing. And so if I change this, I'm just going to put Spanish, Mexico, and then there's it's a little radio button. It says document right there. I'm going to turn that on. And again, this is just an awareness. There's no test at the end. There's a next steps kind of reflection, but not like a test. I'm just turning that document on, that little button on the very bottom, and that essentially converted the entire text that I just scanned.
To the language.
To the language.
Spanish.
Correct.
So I guess I learned this year when we had a Russian student.
Ah.
This was really invaluable because it translated like the sharing. Well, it translated everything for him. And the bilingual department, I know teachers are going to be like, but I don't have an iPad. The bilingual department provides an iPad to those children. So they have access to the tools to get this app.
I love it.
And it made me think, like, because I know if we're out there on campuses and suggesting this to the teachers, they might say, I don't have an iPad, but no, the bilingual department will provide an iPad for that student to do this.
I'm so glad you mentioned that because here's the thing. The work that you all do, and you do a lot, this is a hat that you thought you'd probably never wear, but the thing is because you connect with so many folks throughout the district, you are now equipped to assist that person, even if it's just what Victoria just shared, which is that you can get the resources for that. We can help these students. And it's only going to be more diverse over time. And so, as I mentioned earlier, we're prepping for that. So this shows some of the font and the themes I was showing, but I just changed the entire document. Let me hear.
El comisionado de seguridad pública por desfilar sin permiso y por desafiar una orden estatal que prohibía las manifestaciones.
How easy was that? It was just a couple clicks of a button. We have student videos. We have student videos, and if I'm like, you know what, I don't want to hear a female voice, I can change it as well. I can speed it up, slow it down. But even if I'm just a student, and some of you out there don't like reading books, and that's okay, I'm not going to put you on the spot. You like to listen to audiobooks. Like my wife, unless she has to read the book and there's no audiobook, she will read the book, but she is audiobook 100% on speed like 2.5, and I'm like, can you turn it down? You're driving me crazy. But so this is not just, again, for our emerging bilinguals or our struggling readers. It's a tool for all. Like imagine if you really have to you have to go through a lot of texts as a student. How cool is that just to know that you have that availability of the power in your pocket? It doesn't just have to be the Snapchat and all that. there's a lot of tools, and sometimes there's a knee-jerk reaction to these tools, like, they're going to abuse it, they're not going to use it right. But if they're shown how to do it and how to leverage that to help them in their learning, because their world is going to look completely different. And we have to be aware of those challenges, but not just view them as challenges, but opportunities to learn, okay? To help them overcome those barriers.
Yeah, I'm thinking about what you said, even it's like, let's say we have an article that we need to read, or those of you that are going back to school, you're in a program or whatever. I mean, to take a picture of that and listen to that while you're driving in your car or on the, jogging, walking, whatever you're doing. I mean, that's pretty, that's it. And like you said, then if I was in a different language, I mean, it's a game changer. It really is. Access.
Yeah, again, tools, and Microsoft provides it for free. And Immersive Reader is like all over the place. It's in Canvas, it's in Nearpod, it's in Lumio. If you go to those sessions, they'll explain. I won't steal the thunder or kind of distract us, but there's certain things you have to do. So if you're a specialist and you want the curriculum to be able to access these tools, there's some things that have to be done in a certain way, a protocol, if you will, so that the artificial intelligence can access the data. All right. Okay, so Microsoft Lens. So now we have Microsoft Translator in green and then PowerPoint. PowerPoint. I love it. All right, so here we have PowerPoint. I love PowerPoint. I found my way when I had PowerPoint back in the day when I started actually school. And first it became my crutch because I was scared to death of speaking, believe it or not. And I used PowerPoint to kind of draw away some of that attention with some visuals and some audio, maybe some video. But now it does so much more. And so this is 365. So what I show you isn't necessarily available on the desktop. Okay? So if you use the desktop a lot, everything I say doesn't necessarily apply. Some of this does apply to Teams, but Teams, to be honest with you, we're not there yet as a district as far as turning all that on. There's a lot of other holes. When you turn a program on entirely, it's kind of complicated, but essentially you're opening up this gateway for security to be compromised. And so it's kind of a delicate process and a very lengthy process whenever we allow platforms to be able to hop on our network. All right, so what do you already know about Microsoft 365? Cindy's like, that's why I asked. Say it again? Automatically saves, yes. So a lot of and I'm glad you said that, a lot of the things you would expect like Google Slides to do, it will do here as well. You can collaborate. There's some other cool stuff coming that we're not there yet, but we'll get there, is that you can have a PowerPoint, send someone a PowerPoint in an Outlook email, and they can edit in the email. We haven't turned it on as a district yet. We're not ready. Question?
Does this have like the dictation tool the way that Microsoft 365 Word does?
Oh, like to fill it? No.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of
Yeah.
people in school. Because sometimes that's how I write my papers. I talk to my computer and it writes it for me.
So if you want to hack for presentations, I have something for you later. I'm being recorded, so I'm going to hold off. All right. No, seriously. There's some AI out there that's amazing, and then it'll like kind of give you the gist. But then obviously you go with your lens and your specialist outlook, and you perfect it. But it'll give you definitely a great start. So some things I want to mention. And there's a lot I know, but because of my position, I can't divulge too much. But I can share some stuff that you can just play with, and that's fun and make you more efficient and productive. So what we want to do, so subtitles first, is if I go to slideshow, and I have some screenshots here. Let me actually go to the screenshots. If I go to slideshow, and there's always use subtitles, right? And here's the screenshot. First of all, you want to tell it your spoken language. Now, it's pretty smart, and there's a lot of AI out there that can now recognize language. But if you can tell it, hey, I'm speaking English, you're giving it more data that I can work with, and it's going to be more exact. And then the subtitle language. So always use subtitles, number one. Two, spoken language. Tell it what you're speaking, English, most likely. Or it could be Spanish. So I was sharing this at a parent liaison meeting. You may have like a class, or not a class, but a meeting of parents, and most of them speak Spanish. And you have like 2 English speakers. And if you speak Spanish, guess what? You're going to speak Spanish and have your English subtitles on. Why would you not, right? So we played with that. That was fun. But the subtitle language, what do you want that to be? So if I'm a teacher and I know that in my class, the only other language besides English that is spoken is Spanish, I'm just going to turn that on. So that's when you would use subtitle versus live transcription, okay? So that's subtitles. And so always use subtitles, spoken language, English, subtitle language. I'm going to put Russian, because that came up earlier. And then you get to decide where you want these subtitles to come up. I recommend on the top. Why would I recommend those come on the top instead of the bottom? Because Brian's sitting in the front. No, it could be anybody. It could be Kevin, it could be anybody. But again, yeah, it's being able to see, and so I always recommend on the top. So I click top, and then I present. It's funny, I use my Mac and I shouldn't have. And you're like, why'd you use your Mac, Wisner? That's because my laptop is super slow. But it might bite me in the butt here. And I may have to switch to the second session, and so that's how you live, you learn, right? And it worked on the other smart board, but this was a last minute change. So the subtitles, it would pick up from the microphone. Now here's the thing with teachers, and what some teachers or what some campuses are doing, because we don't want teachers tied to anything, ever, right? Whether that's a document camera or even a smart board, right? You probably know about some of the iPads going out to some of the campuses and the training that's going on with that. High school's not there yet. Carroll will be the first one, and that's going to roll out pretty quickly. All their core will get iPads so that they can academically monitor anywhere and be able to annotate whatever they're working on anywhere in the classroom. And so what some campuses are doing that are utilizing this technology is to, I'm going to do it like this, is to have a microphone on the teacher that connects to the laptop. Because if I'm over here as a teacher, I don't want to be tied to the computer. So imagine the computer's over there. I want to be able to talk and then the subtitles still come up. Does that make sense? So what I'm going to do now, and I think this is the only way I can do it with this class, and the next class I'll log in. So we're going to have to do some editing there, Rene. I apologize. So what I want you to do is figure out this technical issue. I'm going to log into the other one. What I want you to do is with PowerPoint with subtitles, right? With subtitles, how could you use that just at your table? How could you use that with your particular role that you have for the district? And then we'll do a quick shout as I figure this out. Interesting. All right, so let's go to this table here first. Your role so far, so we've had Lens, but we're looking at Microsoft subtitles. With that knowledge, how do you share that? What does that look like for you? This group here, and then we'll just do clockwise.
I was thinking, I just sent out this week a presentation on all of the teacher pipeline initiatives we have happening in our district, and this would have been a wonderful tool to have utilized in that presentation to make sure more people had accessibility to what we're doing.
Love it. Thank you for sharing. Other folks in the...
So we have a Parents Academy that we do, and typically we have a presentation and we translate it into Spanish. We're going to go back and use the subtitles, and that way it's kind of real time versus this distorted translation.
Awesome.
I'm really excited about that.
And we'll get that working. I just reset that ThinkPad because the proof is in the pudding, as it was said a couple times earlier, right? We'll go in a clockwise fashion.
So I was talking about when I was still an assistant principal, we would do our bilingual meetings. I would have to sit here and talk, and then have somebody else translate for me because I clearly don't speak Spanish. And so it was kind of that back and forth because I have a parent that was just looking at me straight from Mexico, and she was just like, I have no idea what you're saying, and she just like look at me all lost, and then a parent would be sitting next to her translating. And it was really hard, and so I wish I would have known about this then, but then even thinking about it now, when our assistant principals share TELPOS scores and they're explaining to parents about the TELPOS test and what the students are doing, they can do this, and it makes it so much easier.
I love it. And how long ago was that?
So the last one I did was, I guess, in December.
Okay, so yeah, the technology was there for sure.
Just feel I also want to add that if you're a sixth grade social studies teacher or a world geography teacher, why would you not include this when you learn about different regions around the world?
Oh,
Just
man.
Hear the language. That it's
Dude,
yeah.
I haven't even thought about that. That's awesome. Very cool.
I have another question.
Of course.
Can you pair these subtitle tools with the Microsoft Lens tool? So if I have a Spanish-speaking parent or student that is not literate in that language, can you use both?
Yeah, of course. Well, and this is, you'd have to think about what technology you would use. So if you have some type of display in the presentation itself is doing through the subtitles, again, you have to be mindful though, you have to know your audience, whether that's students or parents, because if there's more than one language, then it becomes the live transcriptions, which I'll show here in a moment.
Going back to what you mentioned, with Microsoft Lens, when it's reading in that other language, is there any way like maybe to record it? And then you can have like a QR code that the parent can scan and then they're listening to, I don't know if you could record Microsoft Lens when it translates.
Well, the lens, again, the lens brings up the immersive reader. And that gives complete power to the user. And so you could use it for parents and just have that available for them, especially if you don't have those documents printed in their language. Could you use both? Yes, just make sure you have that technology available. And again, a lot of it, or all of it really, is knowing your audience. Let's circle back to this group here.
I was just thinking, because I work with teachers who teach adaptive education, and we're always looking to make adaptive books. And so, say we make an adaptive book with PowerPoint Live, can it be saved, and that way the recording still is saved, and so it reads it back to the student, because our students need that auditory feedback and the subtitles.
You could record it, yes. And all this can be recorded. There's screen recording that you can do and share as a resource. I think that's a great idea. And then we can put in Canvas, where we have access for all.
Just side advertisement, that's why we have Studio. Studio is our screen recording device that's in Canvas. So Amy can record, you can then have it in Studio, make a playlist, and send it out to teachers within that playlist. So it all works together. You just, again, like Dennis said, you have to know your audience, the content, the what, and how you want to do it.
All right, anybody else at that table?
I just wonder, like, we create Lumios for now, and a lot of times they ask, are you gonna make it in Spanish too? And, you know, and every other language, so would we still continue with Lumio and use those accessibility features that could, or would we start here and then turn that into a Google Slide and a Google to Lumio, you know, upload from there?
Great question, and I'm stealing some thunder. but the question was asked, which is with Lumio, Nearpod's a little different, but with all of these tools, you never want to use a screenshot. Like take a screenshot of something and then, because it's an image, that technology doesn't exist yet. I'm assuming it will be one day, but right now for Lumios, so if it was like a screenshot put in there, it won't work. You have to literally type it in for Immersive Reader to read it. For Nearpod, and there's sessions on that, you just create in your Google Slides, and then there's an add-on, a Nearpod add-on in Google that's already there, and then anything that's there text-wise will be accessible with Immersive Reader.
Are you going to the Lumia Nearpod session?
I think we are.
Yeah, because they're gonna talk about the immersive reader and change languages and Lumia.
So we don't, essentially, we wouldn't have to create two different presentations.
I wouldn't, I mean, if the students know how to leverage their immersive reader, they can change it to their language.
And student videos have already been created for Lumio, for Nearpod, all of those for Immersive Reader. And that's what,
After you get done with that session, if you still have wonderings, let us know, and then we can see.
yeah. And that's the beauty of this. This is going to start a lot of conversations, which is the point. This laptop shut down on me. It's reloading. I logged in. It said shutting down. So we're still going to utilize this one. Raise your hand if you've actually been on a PowerPoint Live session, like maybe through Teams or nobody? All right. So let's see if we can get that up in time. We still have some time available. But I mentioned a moment ago for the subtitles. Now, let me actually go back one. Now, having the subtitles on, who does this at home when you're watching a movie or TV? Do you put the subtitles on? Anybody? Right? Always. And that's even good for our young ones. Like I have a 6-year-old, and he's doing better and better with his reading, but that's still helpful for him. And so having subtitles on, just in general, as you present or teachers are presenting, that's accessibility, right, for all. So we're talking about equity. But also with PowerPoint Live, there's engagement. So it's almost as if you have the students logged in as well. They can like it, they can give it an emoji. So as you're going through the content, now it's going to take the presenter to understand that and to encourage students, but you can actually level up the engagement as well with PowerPoint Live. So it's accessibility, it's helping those struggling learners that have that barrier, but also increases engagement as well.
It just helps kids read better too.
Yes.
Having them right in front of them and the teacher speaking too.
It's multi-sensory as well. I think
So this group here, your lens, how does that look for you all?
I know for me, I wouldn't use it directly, but the counselors that I work with often have to do parent presentations, especially when it comes to FAFSA season.
Yes.
There's a lot of Spanish-speaking parents, so I think this would really help them. So just knowing about it and how to turn it around to other people to use with their students and families would be helpful.
And that builds a culture in our district of one that we care about our community when we go through those efforts. And I think that was probably the biggest takeaway for most folks when we met with parent liaisons, is that where we're doing this, because we can have open doors and we can say we're having a meeting, but if a parent shows up first time and maybe second time if we're able to get them back, but we don't provide them any of those tools to understand the message that we're conveying, that doesn't show that we care enough. We have the tools, right? So whether it's counselors, parents, students, getting them that information is vitally important, and we have the tools to do it. Cary, could you find me a different laptop? This one is shut down on me twice, please. And so you'll have access to this. It's a ThinkPad. It's thinking too much, I guess. It's
Would that help you?
We're in viewing mode, so.
I mean, you can restart it.
yeah. If you log out and then I'll log in, let's try that, and then maybe Cary. It's a race to see who gets the laptop first. But because I wanted you to go in this, I wanted you to actually see it live. That's why it's called PowerPoint Live. It's kind of silly to talk about PowerPoint Live and not use it. So when you go to present, by default, if you just click present, it'll just bring it up like it did earlier. But if I click present live, here's what happens. Good thing for screenshots, right? So this pops up. And so folks can either join with, by scanning that, a little QR code, Or what I recommend, especially for teachers, because again, phones, it's the battle. You know it's the battle right now for high school. There's just, social media has like got a chokehold on our kids. But there's also this like shortened URL that the students will have access to. Don't put in this one because this is just a screenshot from an earlier one. That's to get folks in. Once folks are in, even if it is from the phone, you get to choose your own language. So this second option I was referencing earlier, you would want to do if you knew your audience, there was more than one other language besides English. So if there's like folks that have two, or if it's a parent meeting and you're not sure, you're gonna go live. And it may take an extra 3-5 minutes to get them in here, but we wanna have that care and attention to those folks because we want them to feel like, hey, we all belong. This is really important. I made this for everyone, right? And that's how it looks. And then as the presenter, it'll show me as those numbers start coming up, and you could even like have that written down somewhere else, like on the board.
So you don't have to click a specific language if you're doing PowerPoint Live, and we have multiple languages
Thank you,
in
Cindy.
this room, and you ask us to join right here. When I do the joining on my phone or app, I'm selecting the language that I would like to receive this information in.
Correct. So that's the difference, and that's why, let me come back here. So subtitles, that's the first one I showed. You could just have English on there. You could use subtitles all the time like I do in my house with TV and movies, just because sometimes I don't know what they're saying, right? Like, I don't know, it's a thing that we adopted a long time ago. Or if you have a student, or if it's with parents, if you know that there's one other language, subtitles works. With transcriptions, with the live, and again, you'll have access to this, and it's logging in, thank you, Cindy. You present and then go live. And that brings up this fella here.
But you have to have a microphone, is what I'm hearing you say, so that you're moving around, or you're carrying around your laptop, or.
I got 4 laptops here. But one of them's gonna work. Thank you.
Well, and does the audience have to have like earphones? Like, is it?
No, it's a transcription, so it's
Not audio.
Is it that microphone up there, or is it one?
it's the one that it's gonna pick up from the laptop.
So you hit that button, that microphone one up there by editing?
No, that actually may be what Victoria was asking about earlier about the dictation. That may be new. Again, it's very fluid, and you learn about updates before it's even shared by the company. So that could be, because I took these screenshots earlier this week, just so it was up to date once I found out the other one. All right, so I got 2 of them loading. Let's see which one loads first. All right, so I'll come back to this one. This is Microsoft Translator. What do y'all already know about Microsoft Translator?
I know in all of my parent letters, I can highlight it, it Google Translate, and it will translate it into a million different languages that I can add to my parent letters so that my parent letters are accessible. That's all I know about it.
Okay, so this is also changed, and I'm going to click on this website here. Feel free to go to this one. Y'all can go to this one because it's web-based.
Do you have any information on how accurate the translations are as compared to like Google Translate or?
It gets better. They're all working on similar data sets. And so with translation, and this is just a language thing, nothing is ever 100%. So my bilingual folks out there, you know that, and I've been told that. Even Shakira, she says it all the time. It just sounds better in Spanish. And so it'll never be exact, but that model, that language model, is always being evolved. And so when we have those other options, it's pretty cool to have, like, when you start having regional options, and those are growing over time. But as far as accuracy, there's always going to be a disconnect between languages.
Yeah, I think about there was a student who we were assisting who was Vietnamese, and the mother described that the different regions have very specific dialects. So the translator they were using, this is a few years back, but you know, the student still understood it a lot better than
than
us
English.
speaking in English slower and loudly.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
we feel better.
What happens is, yeah.
So is this where it takes the teacher's oral language and translates it on the student's device?
So this will pick up my voice.
Uh-huh.
And here's the crazy thing. The app is amazing. Like, I think you should just have it. I'm going to show you a couple of things. This is, if you have a student, or if you know students and you're out and about, and the teacher's just like, I feel bad for the teachers. They're not equipped for this stuff. And we know that bilingual teachers and or pairs, there's just not enough of them, right? And so having these tools does help. But let me show some things here first. So I'm on my phone, and I am going to enter this code. Start this. Now this changed. We have screenshots, whereas the presenter, it was just a little tab, and I could toggle, basically from the presenter from the web. It's changed. I have to launch it from my phone now. I don't know if it's going to come back, and I can't complain because it's free. So I know from my phone, I know this 5-letter code. If you want to hop on there, it's translator.microsoft.com. Let me actually go back here. If you can see that URL on your device, if you could go there, just so you can see it in action. Translator.microsoft.com. I might be saved here in a second. This is good.
I'm so sorry. What's the 5?
All right, sorry. I was like, what? Thank you, Cindy.
Sorry.
Looks like it. Yeah, hold on. Let me get my translator. So the 5-digit code, and it's all caps, is XKTJY. XKTJY. And notice when you're signing in, right, you just need that conversation code. Put your name and then your language. I'm going to pick Swahili. And I'm going to join the conversation. So now I'm in presentation mode, and when I speak, it'll show up here everything that I'm saying. As a participant, if you logged in, and I press presentation mode, so that basically stops anyone from being able to communicate with me. But we're able to see this live because I pick Swahili. That's why you see this language. Okay. So I turn my mic off, and then on this end, I kind of set myself up here because I don't know Swahili. Actually, I do know a little bit. I just don't know from spelling. Habari. Came up as news. Oh, Vanessa, hello. Thank you, Vanessa. So I see everything on my end. Now that's one function of Microsoft Translator. It's this ability to just have a conversation through a device. Now, as of today, and this may change, you have to, as the presenter, use your phone. A month ago, you could do it from your laptop or your desktop. You can't do that anymore. And that I'm guessing it's going to change. I'm guessing it was an update and they had to take that feature off because there's so much movement right now with Microsoft. They just laid off, I don't know how many thousand, and then they put like, I don't know how many millions into AI. So there's a lot of movement. So just kind of be patient. Hujambo, oh, that's me, my bad. I was like, someone who's Hujambo. All right, cool. I've got accessibility tools lined up here. Praise the Lord. All right. All right, before I move on and circle back to PowerPoint Live, I do want to share some other features of the Translate or the translator. So that's the live one. But let's say I'm a student and I just need some extra tools, right? So there's one here which converts English to Spanish. How frustrating would it be? And I've done it as a teacher before too, and I've actually had students help me communicate with other students because I just couldn't communicate as effectively, right? So Spanish, a bilingual Spanish student who could speak to a student that only knew Spanish. And so I can do that. I can change the languages on the bottom, what I'm speaking, and then what it will come out as, okay? And vice versa, bless you. So for students, they can have this on their phone, invaluable. Like it's about breaking that language barrier like that.
Or their Chromebooks. Every student has a Chromebook.
Yes, every student has a Chromebook. And if they don't have one, maybe they don't know how to check it out. But the opportunity is there.
Does that part have to be on the phone only as well, or is that can be on the Chromebook?
Well, it's changed. Yeah. So they can go to it, like you all just went to it, but they wouldn't be able to start one, if that makes sense. So it's kind of one way right now, and it may change. There's a translator, so there's dictation on the phone, which phones are great for that. So I can speak either my language or teacher speaks, and I can get that translated very quickly. So Microsoft Translator, easy tool. And this, again, for parents, all stakeholders that have that language barrier. The other thing is I can take a picture of anything. And it's actually very similar to what we did earlier with the letter from a Birmingham jail. And it'll translate it. But what this does with the Microsoft Translator, it translates it right on the spot. It doesn't even throw it in immersive reader. That's the difference between this one and Lens. Can you see how, and if I zoom in, yeah.
And just to throw this out there, we learned the
Oh my
hard
God, this
way
thing died.
that a student spoke one language but read another.
Ooh,
That
yeah.
happens sometimes also.
Was that the Russian student?
Yes, that
Yeah, I've heard a lot of stories about that particular student.
we learned a lot.
I had a Ukrainian student, but spoke Russian.
Well, that was it. He spoke
Yeah.
Russian, so we translated things in Russian, and he was just so frustrated because he couldn't read Russian. He read Ukrainian. So we learned that.
All right, we might have some saving grace at the end here. All right, so I'm going to circle back. Thanks, y'all, for your patience. 4 laptops down. We got one. That one turned off for a second, too, so I was kind of freaking out. But just to circle back, we've looked at Translate. Actually, that's the one we just looked at. Students have to, really, it's beneficial if they have the app. If they have a phone, fantastic. If they don't, iPad will also work, okay? Lens we looked at, that was just to scan to bring up the immersive reader. So we have that text-to-speech, and it also played for them. There's also something coming up for that. But PowerPoint, we only looked at the subtitles a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure where subtitles are on, slideshow, spoken language, English, subtitle language. Let's do Filipino and present. All right, let's test this out. Always use subtitles on. Testing 1 2 1 2. Oh, one thing really, really important. This will not work if you do not allow the microphone. So allow that microphone. And we should start seeing some subtitles on the bottom. And there they go. So I didn't change the subtitles to the top, but we have those on the bottom there, and that's automatic. That's the subtitles. Now, let's do live. Do y'all remember when I said when we should probably use live?
Where they have multiple people, you might need to access some other device.
Yes. So I'm going to click Present Live. Really, it's kind of hidden. It's the icon that looks like, I guess, a presentation icon, and then arrow. So you've got to click that arrow. And here's the thing. Some of you are going to play with this later, and you're going to see Present in Teams. It doesn't work great. Teams is not a great team player. it's got so much, it's so robust that it's too much for our and not just us, that's just in general. It's coming along, and when all those different features are ironed out, it's going to be amazing. I just don't recommend it. But presenting live, yes, I do recommend. So what you should see is what I showed you earlier, screenshot. You can use the QR code, which I don't recommend. I recommend once it comes up, putting that short URL. Okay. It's just giving you how that works, real-time reactions, etc. So it's the ppt.ms/UPFMEYMP. And if this was a virtual session, right, you could have folks follow along, and you can copy that link. It has that little symbol there. You can copy and just throw it in your Teams. I would still do it separate than with Teams. Y'all miss the Zoom days. I know you do. I know you do. But we've got Teams, and it's getting better every day. And I can see how many have joined, top right. And let me see on this one if I can join. Anybody having challenges getting in? All right. On the bottom right, you see where it says English? Can you please click on that? Awesome. To whatever. So as I mentioned earlier, and Kevin just echoed, we're using PowerPoint Live. We finally got there, Dr. James. Four laptops later, we're good. All right. So on the bottom right, you're going to see the word English, and you can change that. Okay? You can also hide that transcript pane if you want to. Do you see a little smiley face? Do y'all see the smiley face? Go ahead and click that and just play with it. And then look up here when you do it. Okay? So the smiley face. And so this was the engagement piece. And obviously the presenter has to know this. But that's so much fun. Now, middle school, they'll probably the first time they do it, it's novel. And they're just going to like mash that button.
I would just let them do it.
Yeah.
Guys, we're gonna do.
Yeah, just get it out of your system. Exactly. And you have to be okay with that because, you know, it's novel. And that's the beauty of being in middle school, right? But here we can see that language is still available for me because I chose it, but you as a participant can change that to your language, okay? Which is incredibly powerful. Now what I'm going to do, because, yes, please.
That microphone is picking up everybody. It's not just picking
Correct.
up yours.
Correct. So the microphone is pretty strong. I'm on this side of the room, and it's as long as I'm projecting, it's going to do a decent job picking that up.
However, but it's also picking up us, right?
Yes, which is good though.
Bad, right?
Yeah. It goes back to that middle school conversation. And that's a great, and here's the thing. I'm not a binary person, right? It's not black and white. Let's have a conversation about it, right? It's always a conversation and a learning opportunity.
But I think it's great because we're pushing student discourse.
Yes.
Discussion, so.
Love it.
And that's what I would say, that a teacher would need to have a system so that and explain
Yes.
that, in order for us to all be able to participate, we need to really make sure that we're having one person speak at a time, which really helps with the habits of discussion that we're trying to teach, especially at that middle school and high school, is how to have a conversation. Don't talk over me.
Be respectful.
Yeah, exactly.
It makes me think of accommodations too. If you could save these notes, a student who is not as unable to take notes manually, they could just automatically go forward. They could save it in the forward.
If you do it in Teams, it'll save it.
Okay.
But that comes with a
I know
caution.
as far as recording goes too, if they have an iPad, you always have
Yeah.
a screen record option.
Definitely.
So you have your bilingual student or someone with an iPad just screen record and then they'll have that little video and then they'll be able to re-watch. And that could be an accommodation too, to be able to re-watch the lecture or the conversation or whatever could be beneficial.
If you go to the Google session, because there's accessibility tools everywhere now. You can take a whole presentation and it'll convert pretty much the entire thing. Not images though, and that's something I shared at a different event. We have about 5 minutes. What questions do you all have about PowerPoint Live that we got it going?
I just think this is cool. I'm sorry, you probably already said it, but I was outside on the phone. But how the conversation is attached to that slide. So, I mean, I just think that's, so you're right. The discourse that we're having over this particular slide is captured here. So.
Yes, very important.
I think for me, it's just a game changer, and it goes back to what you said. By using these tools with audiences with so many different languages, we're showing that we care. Like, you know, it's
Yes.
gonna take a while to get people, but the people who need these tools, they're gonna wanna learn how to use them, and then it's gonna make their life easier, and they're gonna just appreciate that, hey, you know, we just had a big customer service thing yesterday, we've gone the extra mile. You know, we're not just telling you there's tools available, hey, look, we're gonna show you how to use them, we're gonna use them in our meetings, and, you know, together, we're just all gonna get better at using these things.
So maybe a challenge or a next step, and we're going to get to next steps here in a minute, is that you model this moving forward, and then someone says, well, how did you do that? And then it's like, well, let me show you. Yeah.
Well, when we talked about accessibility for all students with disabilities,
Auditory impairment. Can you imagine if I'm deaf? And we have a lot of deaf teachers and teachers who are hard of hearing or.
Yes.
Imagine.
Using it at board meetings, so that we really
Oh.
making sure that our community, everybody.
Board meetings.
Man, you know what? You get a high five for that.
Dennis,
Yes.
I know you said next steps is next, but we're in session number 1, and everything you've presented is awesome, and I'm already starting to get overwhelmed.
Yes.
So, on the
Just food for thought or a request is maybe as we start preparing for end of year presentations or curriculum writing or summer school, maybe we could think about seeing if we could schedule a work day for us to bring in something we're specifically working on to get support to select the appropriate.
100%, yes. And I mentioned in the beginning, the expectation is not, you're good to go, right? Right? You're good? No, it's, all right, now you know, what can you do with that? So I love, a lot of you are thinking about ways in which to use it and how to make those connections with folks you work throughout the district with. And so when it comes time, yes, let's collaborate. Let's make it work and see which tool works best for what you're trying to do. Because as you're going to experience today, there's a lot of cool stuff out there. This is just Microsoft, not just, they're pretty cool. But there's some other things as well.
So just to piggyback, you are gonna have an evaluation before we leave, and again, one of the things you're gonna say, like what additional or in-depth do you need specific to this session? You definitely wanna put, you know, there's something you want him to do, or the hands-on, or make him take kinda.
Very important, thank you, Cindy. Nelson Mandela, it's funny because I don't have enough time to tell the story, it's a really good story. But I shared this with a speaker that I heard recently, and I didn't even know he was going to be a speaker. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Cool Runnings. I met the guy that was the main guy from Cool Runnings, and he was explaining his journey, and it was amazing. Anyway, I shared this with him, and he had never heard it, because we were talking about language and how he had a language barrier. Anyway, if you talk to, and it's not gender neutral, so if you're offended, it's old school. If you talk to a person in their language, they understand that goes to his head. If you talk to them in their language, it goes to their heart. So that's, again, it's about showing that you care. So if parents, students, if you provide those tools and you connect with them in their language, they're going to feel it. Okay, it's all about making those connections, pun intended. All right, so are y'all able to click on that bit.ly? Let me take a second if you go back to the presentation. And if you can't, it's up here. You could just type it in. I did a little bit.ly, so. And it is not a Google form, it's a Microsoft form. And what's really cool, I'm not going to highlight it today. I would have to go to the next slide, which I'm not going to do. But Microsoft PowerPoint Live automatically, once the presentation is done, automatically asks how the presentation was. It has a built-in survey that you don't even have to do.
And it's time, we got
Well, that one I did.
okay.
But if I go to the next one, which I'm not going to do because I wanted something a little more specific for what we're doing, it will ask, how's the presentation? What was the audio quality like? But I created my own with this bit.ly. Thank you all. Once you're done with that, on to your next session. I appreciate y'all being patient.